Welcome to this Rapid Fire Explainer. Today, we're doing a lightning-fast dive into Unit 1, Intro to Data Structures.
BCA students, and welcome to this explainer. If you've been staring at your Unit 1 syllabus for discrete structures, kind of scratching your head and wondering why on earth you need to study abstract math to become a software developer, well, you are in exactly the right place. Today, we're going to prove that you aren't just learning dry mathematical formulas. You are actually learning the invisible language of computer algorithms. We're going to decode the very foundation of how computers think, how they organize data, and how they make decisions. Basically, we're taking these seemingly complex academic theories and translating them directly into the programming logic you'll be using for the rest of your career. Let's dive in. Here is our academic roadmap for the next 10 minutes or so. We'll be covering 1. Fundamentals of set theory. 2. Relations and functions. 3. Propositional logic. And finally, 4. A summary of the math behind the code. All right, let's kick things off with Section 1, Fundamentals of Set Theory. As a future developer, I really want you to stop thinking of set theory as just math. Think of it as the absolute foundation for how you are going to group data. When you eventually learn SQL to write database queries, or when you're creating lists in languages like C, Python, or Java, you're literally applying set theory, the mathematical study of collections of distinct objects and their fundamental operations. And the key word here is definitely distinct. In programming, a true set is a data structure that specifically prevents duplicate entries. Whether those objects are user profiles, product inventory, or high scores in a video game, they are all sets. Understanding how to define and constrain these collections is really your very first step in algorithm design.
Now, to manipulate these collections, we use some fundamental operations. Picture dynamic circles on a screen, merging and overlapping to form Venn diagrams. When we apply a union, we're combining all our data together into one giant pool. When we apply an intersection, we're filtering our data to find only the overlapping items, like finding users who are both premium subscribers and live in a certain city. Then there's the difference, which is finding elements in one set but deliberately excluding anyone from another. Combining all of these allows for advanced filtering, which is perfectly illustrated by the distributive law you see right at the bottom there. It shows how intersecting a set, A, with a union of two other sets, B and C, distributes exactly like multiplication over addition in basic algebra. So A intersect B, union C, is the exact same as A intersect B, union A intersect C. Understanding this equivalence means you can actually optimize your future database queries to run way faster and use less memory. Let's look at a super practical example straight from your model exam paper, the number 50. The problem asks, if out of 50 people, 20 drink tea and 10 drink both tea and coffee, how many drink only coffee? Now, if you just guess, you'll probably get tangled up. But using set theory, we can break this down logically. We know our total universe. The union is 50. The tea set is 20 people in total, and the intersection, those drinking both, is 10. That means out of the 20 tea drinkers, 10 drink strictly tea and nothing else. So if 10 drink strictly tea and 10 drink both, that accounts for 20 people. That leaves exactly 30 people remaining in our universe of 50 who must drink only coffee. See, you aren't just solving a word problem here. You are essentially writing a mental query to filter a database of 50 users. And as beautifully outlined right here in your course syllabus, mastering these basic laws and counting principles is the absolute gateway to understanding all discrete structures. It is placed as the very first step in your BCA journey for a really good reason. Moving right along to Section 2, Relations and Functions. So we start with Cartesian products. Imagine two distinct sets of data points. Now visualize glowing lines shooting out, connecting every single element from set A to every single element in set B. If set A has elements 1 and 2, and set B has elements 2 and 3, multiplying them generates every possible ordered pair. 1, 2, 1, 3, 2, 2, and 2, 3. It's a totally exhaustive mapping. In programming, you are going to use this exact logic when you need to combine different tables of data. In SQL, this is known as a cross-join. For example, if set A is a list of 2 shirt colors and set B is a list of 2 pant styles, the Cartesian product instantly generates all 4 possible outfit combinations. Now, the crucial part is how we rigorously map this data, which brings us to functions. Let's look at a classic exam sticking point, the difference between one-to-one and onto functions. A one-to-one function means every single input maps to a unique, non-repeating output. Think of mapping users to email addresses. Every single user needs a totally unique email so the system doesn't crash or send private messages to the wrong person, right? An onto function, on the other hand, focuses on the output side. It ensures that every possible output value gets hit by at least one input. No unused outputs left behind. Understanding these specific mappings ensures your future data pipelines won't lose vital information, create dangerous duplicates, or leave weird gaps in your database. Let's see how this builds into function composition. I like to think of it as a digital assembly line. You pass your raw data, X, into the first machine, function F. It processes it and spits out an intermediate result. But instead of stopping, that output is instantly passed as the direct input into the next machine, function G. Mathematically, we write this as G of f of x. Practically speaking, if f of x calculates a shopping cart subtotal and g of x applies regional tax, you compose them to get the final price. In software development, you'll write hundreds of modular functions that call one another exactly like this. If you clearly understand the mathematical flow of data here, tracing complex variables through your code later is going to be a breeze. All right, on to Section 3, Propositional Logic. Okay, so with our data beautifully grouped by set theory and mathematically mapped by functions, how do our future applications actually make decisions about all this information? Pay close attention here, because this is literally the invisible code running behind every single if-else statement you will ever write. Propositional logic deals entirely with statements that are strictly binary. They evaluate to either true or they evaluate to false. There is absolutely no gray area. A computer totally relies on this certainty to function. Picture a true-false binary switch rapidly flipping as this truth table fills up. This table exhaustively maps out our core logical connectives, and, or, and not. Let's really break this down, row by row. Notice the AND column. It only outputs true if both input P and input Q are true. Think of a secure login screen. The system only grants access if the username is correct and the password is correct. If even one input is false, access is completely denied, resulting in a false output. Now, the OR column is way more forgiving. It outputs true if just one condition is met. Think of an online store. You get free shipping if you are a premium member or if you spend over $50. Finally, the NOT column simply flips the input to its exact opposite. If P is true, not P is false. This simple table is the foundational blueprint for all computer hardware and decision-making architecture. So why do we painstakingly draw out these truth tables with all their rows and columns in our exams? Well, it's to prove things like tautologies. A tautology is a complex logical statement that mathematically evaluates to true in every single possible scenario, no matter what the inputs are. We use these tables to systematically verify that the logical architecture we construct is absolutely bulletproof. If your logic has a hidden flaw, like a scenario you just didn't account for, your future software is going to crash or worse, make the wrong automated decision. Proving logic formally on paper prevents catastrophic bugs in your code later. Wow, we have covered a lot of ground today. Let's bring it all together in Section 4. Summary: the math behind the code. Here is the crucial takeaway. When you're studying discrete structures, you aren't just memorizing dry formulas to pass a test. You are building your core programming toolkit. Set theory is going to make you a master of data structures and databases. Relations and functions will teach you how to build clean, efficient data pipelines without losing information. And propositional logic is the literal bedrock of all the conditional algorithms you'll ever write. You are learning how to build a digital brain from scratch. And that brings us perfectly to the official outcome of your course. As your own BCA syllabus proudly states, the goal is to apply these concepts to address real-life problems. The ultimate purpose of these mathematical structures is to empower you to solve complex, real-world issues through computing. You're learning to mathematically translate ambiguous human problems into a strict, structured language that a computer can rapidly process, evaluate, and solve.
I want to leave you with this final thought. Everything we rely on today, from massive global databases to cutting-edge artificial intelligence, to the very operating system on the phone in your pocket right now, is ultimately built on simple true and false switches, organized by distinct sets, and cleanly connected by mathematical functions. If these basic foundational blocks built the entire modern digital world, what are you going to build with them? Keep that in mind as you tackle your next Unit 1 assignment. Thanks for joining me on this explainer, and I'll see you next time.